I just think it's a really impressive building, and it's beautiful. When we are at events with other professionals that have been to Bethany House, we get a lot of comments. People will say, "Oh, Bethany House, that's the beautiful building, isn't it?" I think that it when we're booking someone into the hostel, seeing how a new resident responds to the building. I mean, sometimes they are the same as how I was on my first day. It's a little overwhelming, and especially knowing that there's 93 residents that live here, that can sound really intimidating. But I think that just seeing how beautiful the building is, and I think that it has quite a homely feel to it. So I think that can sort of take the edge off of that and make it a little bit more welcoming.
I know that it was a convent. Again, I was so wrapped up in myself when I first moved in, but these little bits of information seeped in that it used to be a convent, and obviously the name was different when I moved in. It was Irish Centre Housing, and there was a poem by the door, and all those little things, it made a massive difference. It was just little things where that was just a comfort to me, like this was a safe haven and a building with that history, and I could see from the architecture, particularly that corridor. I mean, I don't know if this happened, but I just imagine lots of nuns in habits doing that, and that it being a place of quiet and solace, and kind of like a sense of being watched over by God or something. I'm not that religious anymore, but all those things definitely, they were in my mind when I was settling in.
Ever since I sat on those little cushions out there my first day, every part of it is saturated with so much character, and everyone's bringing their own histories into it, and just layer upon layer of history and life and humanity, which you can't help but feel living here. It's so much more than just a building or a house. Like, how does a building manage to absorb all that? Bethany House has done the job.
So my favourite is the long corridor that leads up to the chapel door, and it gets the light coming in from the courtyard. It just really reflects that there's so much history in the building.
That peaceful walk along the corridor that I have day to day, I just wouldn't have that in a modern building.
When I'm going to meet some of my friends out in the courtyard, you always walk through there, and so it is walking through this history out into the present community.
Some people were quite shocked, and they see a bit of a contrast between the nuns that live here and maybe the residents that live here now, but really other people find that it makes a lot of sense, really.
That connection of being in a supported space for women, I feel that overwhelmingly.
I'm so intrigued by it. I would love to see what's behind that door, especially as we've had residents asking about it as well. They're really interested in it, and it's just, a big question mark at the end of that corridor, really.
I mean, obviously I see it. I know it's no longer a chapel, and that, did someone buy it and there was art installations in there? And then that also switched hands?
The outside of the chapel, and completely mystified me where it was. I hadn't made that connection that door would have led to it.
What we did consider, what would they do with the chapel? Will they keep it as a chapel? Because we were very proud of our chapel. My goodness, we were. Yeah, it was big, and it was, it's our centre of our lives, really, with that chapel. What were they going to do with it? I'm not sure. I don't think we were encouraged to find out, and anyway, it didn't. None of our business what happened afterwards, but we just hoped she would be respected.
I suppose now that I've found out that the chapel is beyond that door and that there's this much physical, closer connection in terms of proximity to how the whole of this building used to be used, it feels a shame that that's obscured or hidden or cut off from view.
Also imagining that it would be the space of silence and prayer and reflection, and kind of the ultimate end of Bethany House, or the most significant space, and the fact that that's cut off at the roots, it's kind of left it hanging a little bit, or left it incomplete.
We just wonder who's coming behind us, what they'll do with it. Whether they would treasure the chapel as much as we did, as a chapel. There's silence and services and incense and sermons and singing, everything else. What were they going to do with it? I'm not sure. It was up to people who bought the place, what they did with it.
I mean, because nuns would have presumably lived and worked and cooked and washed in this part of the building, and then gone there for this kind of sacred, meditative experience, this kind of sublime. I mean, this is the everyday, mundane part of the house, whereas that's the ascendant one. And it's flipped. It really has.
Oh dear. It's obvious, really. I can't think of anything more obvious, really. Whatever you do in the kitchen, you do in the kitchen. What you do in chapel, you do to God. Not that you don't ever do everything but God, but chapel's very special.
So I think it is a bit of a pity, because I think it's such an asset to the building. It's a shame that it seems to be divided up and separated, as if, I don't know, just ripping that part of the history from the building. It does, yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame. But that is obviously the way that property in London goes, and it doesn't surprise me at all.
It's just a fact of living in cities all over the world, and particularly London and particularly Islington, that in very close proximity you have people in really different economic situations to one another, and nevertheless we kind of all brush shoulders and are just separated by literally a few walls and blocked off doors, and it's quite bizarre when you think about it.
I think some of our residents come to us at a point in their lives where they are ready to start rebuilding their lives. Some of our residents have experienced so much trauma, and I think that the hostel provides that safe space for them to start rebuilding their lives, start addressing the things that they might need some support with. And then the aim is for people to progress, rebuild and move on from here.
With this building, there are particular rooms where I can hold in my mind a sense of ruin and of rebuild, and this would be one of them. because when I first moved in and I was still drinking all the time, I was offered therapy with the Maya Centre, and you know, I used to meet this woman here once a week, and she was incredibly patient with me. I couldn't stop drinking, and I was just in such a mess every time I came into this room, and nothing ever got better, and you know, nothing had improved, and it was just amazing that I made the appointment. That was about the best that I could do. So, you know, in contrast now, I'm sitting here and I've started studying part-time and working part-time. A couple of years abstinent from alcohol, you know, very stable in terms of my weight and my mental health. With the eating disorder, things are so different now, and it's all happened because I've had this place to be, I've had this secure home.
Like, how does a building manage to absorb all that? Bethany has done the job.